document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers? No further laying. Statements and communications by ministers? No statements and communications by the clerk? Messages from the Governor General? Messages from the Senate? Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat and new writs? Presentations of petitions? Presentations of reports of committees? Adoption of reports of committees? First reading of bills? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move for the first reading of a bill for an act to provide for the continuous service in the public service of Raymond Mackey. I so move. Second.
Order the document be brought up. It has been moved and seconded, right? It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a first time. As many that are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the continuous service and public service of Raymond Mackey.
Order the bill be high on the table. For the first reading of bills,
Yes, Madam Speaker.
the chair recognizes the honourable member Fox Hill.
I'd like to move for a bill to be read for the first time, a bill for an act to provide for the continuous service in the public service of Mary Mitchell, no relation.
Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes. Order the document to be brought up. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the continuous service and public service of Mary Mitchell.
Order that both documents do lie on the table. Further reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I move for the first reading of a bill for an act to provide for the continuous service in the public service of Japheth Edison Delaveau. If I can have a second. Second.
Thank you, honourable member. Order that the document be brought up. Mr. Holmes, there's someone trying to get your attention. I know. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the continuous service and public service of Japheth Edison Delaveau.
Thank you. Order the document to lie on the table. For the first reading of bills, the chair recognizes the honourable member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and I've read for the first time a copy of the following. A bill for an act to provide for the establishment, incorporation, governance, control, and administration by a board of the Bahamas Agriculture and Marine Science Institute and for matters incidental thereto.
Thank you, honourable member. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honourable member. Order the bill be. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to provide for the establishment, operation, governance, control, and administration by a board of the Bahamas Agriculture, Marine Science Institute, and for offices in
Thank you. Order that the document to lie on the table. For the first reading of bills? No further readings. Second reading in committal of bills? Committee of the Whole, House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate's amendments. Resolutions. chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Wamkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to move for the adoption of a resolution, notice of which was given last week. The substance of which is to permit the Accountant General to purchase the fee simple of the hereditaments listed in the first schedule, yet to and for the Accountant General to convey a strip of land commonly called and known as the Paris Court Road Reservation. The resolution reads, whereas by a declaration of intending acquisition dated the 15th day of December 2021 and published in the Official Gazette on the 17th day of December 2021, the minister responsible for lands declared that the hereditaments set out in the first schedule hereto were needed for a public purpose, namely for the expansion and accommodation of a hotel development and other uses related thereto. And whereas by a reissued notice of possession dated 25th day of January 2022 and published in the Extraordinary Gazette dated 25th day of January 2022, the hereditaments became vested in the Treasurer. And whereas, pursuant to Section 53A of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, the Treasurer, as a corporation sole established under Section 4.1 of the said Act, and continued as the Accountant General pursuant to Sections 210, and 131 of the Public Finance Management Act 2021, number 8 of 2021, shall not sell or make any other disposition of the fee simple of the said hereditaments without the proper approval of both Houses of Parliament, signified by resolution thereof. And whereas the Accountant General is desirous of conveying the hereditaments to the company, SF, Roman numeral 4, BLELP, to be used for the public purposes set forth above, in exchange for approximately 336 square feet way leave, more particularly described in the second schedule here too, way leave for the sum of $10. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to Section 3A of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter, this House approves the sale by the Accountant General to the purchaser of the fee simple of the hereditaments listed in the first schedule hereto in consideration of the sum of $10 and the way leave in the second schedule hereto. Madam Speaker, historically, we're dealing with what was deemed to be a public road, a strip of land that we now seek permission to convey to the new owners of what we call the Marriott Hotel at the corner of Nassau Street and Bay Street. The strip of land, or the right of way, or this road, public road, has been abandoned for many, many years. And in fact, from my own recollection, frequenting that area, which is the southern boundary, the then southern boundary of two tracts of land upon which two hotels were erected. One was called the Dolphin Hotel, Many of you may not know that name, but there was a Dolphin Hotel in the 50s and 60s. And then that was on the eastern side of this tract of land, right on the corner of west of Bay Street and Nassau Street. And then to the west of that hotel was another hotel that was called the Anchorage Hotel. And all these were way back in those days. That going back some years. Yes. And to the south of that, we never knew that there was a road, because in the later 70s, another building was built. The member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini would be very familiar with that property. It was a building was erected, became a nightclub. It was called Ronnie's Rebel Room, and then later on it was called Culture Club. So you can call Culture Club. Now, yeah, man, I can name many more. And that property, and then right to the east of the building we call Ronnie's Rebel Room, and later named Culture Club, was the parking lot for the establishments, both the Dolphin Hotel and the Anchorage Hotel. And so that parking lot subsumed this road, public road, unbeknownst, I think, to any of us at the time. And the Anchorage Hotel was owned by a company that I think John Morley had some interest in. Yeah, he did. And then it was later owned by Tiger Phillipson. And he had it for many years. And then it was went back to the Morleys, who then sold it to another group. And then both hotels just fell into disuse for quite a number of years. Until in about 2000, I think the company was Driftwood Hotels Group. They acquired the old Anchorage Hotel. And then later on, they acquired the Dolphin Hotel. And also that included the acquisition of the Ronnie's Rebel Room, but that name had changed to Culture Club. And they bought all that property because it all became the one property on that corner. It was only after, it was during the acquisition and due diligence to establish title, because the owner who was selling and the buyer who was buying all understood that they were getting all that property, only to discover that there was about at least 7,073 square feet of road, a 27 feet wide road by 200 that ran in, as I said, on the southern boundary, separating the Culture Club properties and the parking lot from the two hotels. And that was done during trying to settle the title. Now, the sale went through, and because the road was in disuse in any event, persons only came in there to go to the hotels and or to the club. And the then owners, the Driftwoods, they bought about 35 feet of a strip of 35 feet on the western side of the then Anchorage to have access directly from Bay Street to the property So you'll find that on the west side of the now Marriott, you'll see that the entrance there, that was a 35-foot strip that was acquired sometime around in 2000 as well, to have more access to that property. And so, quite a number of years, efforts were being made to, first of all, try to identify whether that property was in the name of anyone that could convey it to the owners of the property, owners of the two, whether the tract of land that housed the two hotels and the culture club. But to no avail, no owners were found. The first recognition of this roadway the first recognition that there was a roadway separating this property was discovered sometime, was only revealed in what we call the Book of Commutation. That was a book that is a part of the public records in the Lands and Surveys Department that goes back to 1847, which records the names of persons in occupation of land in all of the Bahamas. So if your forefather was occupying a piece of land in 1847, when they did the surveys, you will find that their name will be written in the book with a little survey of that tract of land indicating, well, this is the person. Now, in 1847, the commutation document, for the first time, showed that there was about 2.5 acres of property situated in that area. This was part of the 2.5 acres. And there it showed something called Paris Court as a public road. That's the first acknowledgement or known recorded acknowledgement of this public road, and it was called Paris Court. What we further discovered was that the 2.5 acres that was recorded in the Book of Commutation, noting this Paris Court, that prior to that, that 2.5 acres was formed part of 13.5 acres of tract of land that was originally granted to James Howe, or Howe, H-O-W-E. And that was in 1789. And that was right at the junction of Nassau Street and Bay Street. And so there we find for the first time an acknowledgement of that road. So successive administrations, at the behest of counsel for the owners of the property, attempted to resolve this because they would have been in possession of this public road from time immemorial. As I said, from the days I would have gone to the Anchorage Hotel and to the Dolphin Hotel, we never knew that there was a public road. When I used to go to the Culture Club, we never knew that we were traversing a public road. We thought we were just going on. They had this easy access to these properties. And so once this was discovered, of course, that always raised issues with raising funding to either renovate the hotel or improve the amenities around the properties. And usually it delayed a lot of progress to improve the touristic experience that persons would have at that property. And so, as I said, successive governments have been attempting to resolve this. And I note that in February 2020, the then Office of Attorney General affirmed many of the views that were expressed by previous Attorney Generals on this matter, and gave advice as it was to extinguish the road, and that the government could then acquire it and convey it to the operators and owners of the two hotels. Now, in exploring that advice and how it could best be achieved, it was discovered that BPL has a station on properties, I think, owned by the owners of the hotel, and they thought this was a good time to regularize their presence on that property, because there was no, from all accounts, there were no record or evidence that BPL or BEC, as it then was when it was erected, had permission to place the station there. And then, of course, you ought to always, and BEC would always want and need access to that station. And so we took the opportunity, or the opportunity was taken to seek to have a way leave to permit the BPM at all times to have access to that property. And so in exchange of that right, we are extinguishing the road, vesting the road by way of acquisition in the treasurer, and in turn the treasurer will convey to the owners. It clears up that long-standing issue for the owners of the hotel property, and it also gives us the opportunity to regularize BPL's existence on their property by allowing them to have where their station is and have proper access to that station. So we take that opportunity to do so. And so, Madam Speaker, with that overview, yes. Okay, 3-5. Yeah. What's the number? 6. Yes, yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So what's the box? Yeah. So, Madam Speaker, I'm just being reminded that I wish to foreshadow that there'll be an amendment in respect to the resolution as it relates to the proper square footage of the property that's going to be exchanged. And so, instead of 336 square feet, it ought to have been 354 square feet for the way leave. And that will be a consequential amendment to the schedule as well. And that will be moved during the course of the appropriate time in this debate. And so, Madam Speaker, with that overview of the reasoning behind the move of this resolution, I do move that the House resolve that pursuant to Section 53A of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, this House approves the sale by the Accountant General to the purchaser of the fee simple of the hereditaments listed in the first schedule hereto in consideration of the sum of $10 and the way leave listed in the second schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Item Number.
Second.
Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to second the resolution. I do so proudly on behalf of the resilient people of Exumas and her magnificent 365 keys, as well as Ragged Island. It is always an honor to represent them when I stand in this house, and I realize each time I do that it's only through the good graces of God and the faith of the people of my constituency that put me here in a place positioned to serve them and all the people of this great Commonwealth. I therefore rise on this resolution that we're debating here today to acquire the land that will support the development and the expansion of our tourism product. This resolution shows that we are moving methodically and intentionally to facilitate our tourism sector. The business here today sends a signal to the Bahamas and to the world that our country is open for business and that we act as friends and a partner to the investment community. Prime Minister Davis, who is also the minister responsible for lands, and whom I have the pleasure to serve in my ministerial capacity, has articulated what we are doing here today and why. I sincerely thank him for his contributions and note that there isn't much I can add to this particular subject. I would also thank him for his clear recollection of the anchorage and the dolphin. I don't know about this, Madam Speaker, but when I came from Exuma, I was fully aware of the Culture Club. Madam Speaker, as all of us who sit in this house can attest, the issue of land reform has long been a thorny, vexing issue. The absence of a proper land registry has placed many individuals and institutions at a disadvantage in the country, including the government. We recognize that generation land, communist land, and land in the family islands in particular has caused some vexing concern. And this is why I commend our Prime Minister for taking this head on and appointing a land reform working group since coming to office. There are also other areas where land and the rights to land have impacted Bahamian citizens and residents. One of those areas is the disturbing issue of beach access, particularly in the Providence. And the stance of this administration is clear. We believe that Bahamians should have simple and easily identifiable access to our beaches. Public beaches are our right. And while we pledge to work with developers for the most favorable outcomes for their projects, Bahamians must not be sidelined and denied access to our beautiful beaches as our country develops. We plan to be proactive in our approach, as I have done so in my capacity as Minister responsible for tourism in the Providence and Paradise Island. And I personally have been proactive in my approach as a Member of Parliament, and I've asked local government town councils to look at an exercise to identify appropriate beach accesses across the islands well in advance of development in those areas. And at this time, I take this opportunity to encourage all local councils across the Bahamas to do likewise. And I encourage all members of Parliament, especially those who represent the Family Islands, to proceed in doing so with haste. I've said often, and we will begin in short order to roll out many announcements of developments across the Bahamas. And therefore I ask you to be proactive in protecting Bahamian right to access beaches, and our administration will play a foremost part in doing just this. Madam Speaker, as we look around the world, we see that international business is opening back up and flourishing. And through the global coronavirus pandemic, it continues, but we have put in place good protocols that's respected by our traveling public, our tourists, and our partners around the world. And as you would know, throughout the fourth wave of this pandemic in our country, this administration did not panic. We did not resort to draconian measures on the public.
No, sir.
We considered these all issues of last resort. Instead, we actually followed the science. We consulted with the health professionals. We looked at the data in terms of the most likely outcomes of Omicron infections and spread, and we kept our economy open. Resorts were open for the holiday season, bringing in much-needed economic stimulus and tax revenues. Our hospitals were kept in manageable conditions, and this month we were able to successfully open schools for thousands of children across our country who had been sick and tired of COVID. We continue to provide vaccines for every eligible Bahamian who want one, and we have opened up free testing sites to better track the spread of COVID-19. Our Prime Minister has led the way in distributing across the country medical-grade masks, and we expect this is going to continue. We anticipate that with the falling case numbers, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention will shortly re-examine its travel advisory for the Bahamas, and we look forward to them doing so. I say all this, Madam Speaker, to say that in order to lead and get buy-in from the Bahamian people, one need not do so through fear and the threat of curtailing freedoms. To successfully lead, we will continue to be frank with our people, we recognize the challenges, and work with our stakeholders, including the public, to orchestrate a unified, methodical, systematic response. And we did so without the use of emergency orders. We said on the campaign trail that there was a better way to manage the pandemic, and so said, so done. Madam Speaker, we remain of the view that the fastest way to grow the economy is through driving investments. We are growing investment interest by inspiring confidence in our economy, swiftly facilitating investments and doing so in a transparent manner. Our mission has always been to create opportunities for jobs and entrepreneurial ventures through driving investments. And that's what we've always been about. And not 6 months into our term in office, we're already seeing the fruits of our labor beginning to grow. More than anything, Madam Speaker, I work in the team at the Ministry of Tourism. We work hard from sunrise and after sunset each day in our role to help our people prosper as we prosper. We made a commitment to the Bahamian people. I never forget the people I met across the length and breadth of our country who sent us here to do this important work. So we must help the lady I met whose refrigerator had nothing but a half bottle of mayonnaise. We must work tirelessly to bring aid to the woman who told me that her children ate only once a day thanks to the school lunch program. And we must provide great opportunity for the young man who told me he went fishing to find dinner, just as I did as a child. Our blueprint for change recognizes that we must bring immediate relief as we grow the economy. That's what we've always been about, Madam Speaker, and that is what we are doing today. Madam Speaker, the United Nations World Tourism Organization has pointed out that the Caribbean is rebounding faster than the rest of the world. And we also know that the Bahamas is rebounding faster than the rest of the Caribbean. This is a testament to our magnificent team of professionals around the world, our resilient product, the warmth of our people, our proximity to the USA, our well-thought-out open policy on entry, our refusal to lock down our country, our strong industry partnerships, pent-up demand for travel, the increased airlift, and the diversity of our 16 main island destinations. We can tell you today that the UNWTO is right. By the end of 2021, Bahamas tourism arrivals month over month were approaching 2019 levels for the corresponding periods, with international air travel down just by 5% in December compared to December 2019. For the full year 2021, the Bahamas welcomed almost 1 million stopover visitors, according to our preliminary numbers. And whilst this is below our number of stopover arrivals for 2019, the global average shows that stopover visitors were down more than 72% worldwide, according to the UNWTO. ForwardKeys.com, one of the world's leading tourism data and analytics companies, recently issued its report for December, showing that we are 4.5% ahead of 2019 arrivals in our main tourism markets of the United States of America. And that deserves a round of applause. The big news, Madam Speaker, is that the rebound continues. One of our most urgent areas of interest for investment and growth is Grand Bahama. And you would note the Prime Minister had an official visit there this week where he spoke to the need to get the economy moving. And one of the key components, and this is the Grand Lucayan Resort, is already public knowledge that the last sale agreement for the resort was not further pursued by this administration, and the agreements were mutually terminated. And therefore, to expedite now the sale of the resort with the best possible terms, the board of Lucayan Renewal Holdings Limited, the special purpose vehicle created to facilitate the sale of the resort, has engaged the services of Colliers International, a world-renowned real estate company with a vast professional network that is accustomed to handling large-scale, high-end touristic transactions. Madam Speaker, much of the Bahamian people's hard-earned tax dollars have been invested in this resort, and we will not tarry in causing there to be as swift as possible a transaction on the best terms possible to move this investment along. We advised the former administration against the purchase of this resort, but in governance, you play with the hand you dealt, not the one you wish you had. And therefore, companies interested in purchasing the resort will at a minimum be required to provide proof of funding and a vision and a plan to restore and revolutionize, help us open again the economy of Grand Bahama with a shared vision for the growth and development of this island. The offer process has begun in earnest. It will close at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March the 2nd, 2022. Offers will be subject to rigorous due diligence to be vetted by Colliers and the board of Lucayan Renewal Holdings Limited. And we are seeking partners that plan to invest heavily in the property and in the island of Grand Bahama. I've said before, we have seen about 7 serious inquiries about the property, and we are cautiously optimistic that this process will help us to advance this matter as swiftly as possible. As is the philosophy of our government, Madam Speaker, we are encouraging the participation of Bahamian investors and bidders in this process, and we ask them to participate and engage actively in the process, Madam Speaker. As members of this House would be aware, the government of Bahamas has also acquired the Grand Bahama International Airport in the wake of Hurricane Dorian. I undertake to lay in this House the deal previously struck in acquiring this airport so that the public can see what has been entered into in their name. In summary, though, the sellers took the insurance money. We spent in the region of $1 million up front. And we inherited the ongoing operational losses to the tune of $300,000 a month, of a total of roughly $3.6 million per annum, Madam Speaker. And since the acquisition, very little has been done. One of the highlights of the Grand Bahama International Airport has long been its pre-clearance facility. Since the airport was destroyed during the storm, the U.S. has relocated some of its resources and suspended pre-clearance at that location. We have recently been informed by the U.S. government that given the ongoing indefinite suspension of pre-clearance services at Grand Bahama International Airport and the slow state of the reconstruction of the airport, that the U.S. government has initiated a process to cease pre-clearance operations at the Grand Bahama International Airport. Our partners, the U.S. government, has assured us that it remains committed to the agreement between the government of the United States of America and the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on pre-clearance entered in 1974. The U.S. Embassy, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol have advised us that they look forward to upcoming pre-clearance consultative group meetings as an opportunity to further enhance our successful collaboration in facilitating and securing travels between our countries. And whilst those meetings take place, we're not going to sit on our hands. We're going to begin the remedial work at the Grand Bahama International Airport. These works will include the reinstallation of generators to ensure that recent incidences of lengthy delays at night that have been endured by our residents in Grand Bahama will not recur. And, Madam Speaker, we will be investing in elevators immediately to ensure that our Bahamian citizens who work at the tower will be able to access their workspace more efficiently. I had the occasion to walk these steps, and I was exercised physically and mentally that our employees would have to do this sometimes 2-3 times a day. It's unconscionable. And we're going to do something about it, Madam Speaker. We want to ensure the Bahamian people that we are building a world-class airport in Grand Bahama and throughout the country, in fact. And very shortly, you will hear more about the possibilities of public-private partnerships, also open to Bahamian participation for these airports. And I say to the people of Grand Bahama that the Grand Bahama International Airport will be our absolute priority in terms the Grand Bahama International Airport in this process of PPPs will be our absolute priority, as we see it as significant in encouraging investments to the island and moving this island along back to its place of prominence. In the meantime, we will continue some remedial works to ensure that working conditions of Bahamians and residents will move Grand Bahama and its people along to better working conditions and a better environment on this airport for the traveling public. Madam Speaker, I will add in closing that we are open for business. We are open for business in tourism and investments. And the thrust of this mandate is reaching the world. At the opening of Sandals last week, I had the opportunity to speak with the Prime Minister of Jamaica along with the Minister of Tourism, who were both impressed as to how swiftly we were moving along and how much we had accomplished in our rebound in such a short period of time. In the coming weeks and months, we will be making announcements of even more new projects in tourism. The reigniting of many stalled projects and investments in the blue economy, in the industrial sector, and in renewable energy. Here very shortly, I plan to make an announcement about an investment in the Little Exuma area that will get my people excited about what's to come for the surrounding areas. And I would note to my colleagues from Eleuthera an article. You would already note the enthusiasm of the possibilities of these islands. It's at a fever pitch. And I look forward to rolling out those announcements in short order. And Michael, be not dismayed. Yes, sir. We have not forgotten Meguana. And therefore, over the course of time, you will see some significant possibilities for opportunities, for job creation, and entrepreneurial opportunities for our citizens. I support this resolution, May God bless the people of Exuma, the people of Ragged Island and the Jamento Keys, and the people of the phenomenal 365 keys of the Exumas. And may God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed. And it reads, whereas by declaration of intending acquisition dated 15th day of December 2021 and published in the Official Gazette on the 17th day of December 2021, the minister responsible for lands declared that the hereditaments set out in the first schedule hereto were needed for a public purpose, namely the expansion and accommodation of a hotel development and other uses related thereto. And now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to Section 53A of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, this House approves the sale by the Accountant General to the purchaser of the fee simple to the hereditaments listed in the first schedule hereto in consideration of the sum of $10 Bahamian and the way leave listed in the second schedule hereto. As many, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you, Madam. On a point of order, clarification, the member was on a wicked, a good rule, and I did not want to disturb him. The member gave the impression that we introduced draconian measures, and they, on the other hand, need not do such thing. I want to remind the member that at the time we had introduced lockdown, there were no vaccines, and the vaccines that would decrease hospitalization and date. We were dealing with a very deadly virus, the Delta virus. And as a result of no vaccine, the entire world and recommendation by WHO meant that recommended that we had to shut the movement, to just stop the movement of the virus. And without the vaccine, the only way to stop the movement of the virus were by lockdowns. So as a result of the vaccines, we're now seeing a different presentation. Mandate at that time, Madam Speaker, were lives. Lives to us were more important than money. And that is still my position. Being trained as a medical physician, life is still more important than money to me and at that time to my government. And at that time, the only way to save lives, as recommended by the medical community and the advice by the professionals, was to lockdown. And hence, that is why it was done. There is no need for it today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for it.
Madam Speaker, I'm glad that the member did not defend the fact that those actions were draconian. But he is entitled to defend his record. The Bahamian people are entitled to reflect on their memories of those draconian measures, those very difficult times, Madam Speaker. And we are delighted that we're moving in the right direction. We're delighted that Omicron appears to be behind us. And we are delighted that we have not been able to put in place lockdowns of our economy. We will speak to our record. I will allow him to defend his. We will speak to ours. And we're very happy with the methodical, sensible protocols that we've put in place that's receiving a resounding impact on tourism.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am not going to entertain a debate. I only want to make one point before I take a 5-minute break. But, Madam Speaker, the records would reflect that those that did not follow WHO protocols in terms of cessation of the spread of the virus, in terms of lockdown, their hospitalization, their death rate and everything were higher. And our mandate was life was more important.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member for Exuma and Ragged Island. For the sake of the public and those in the Family Island, explain to them what draconian means, please.
Madam Speaker, draconian would be moving at the viciousness of a dragon, Madam Speaker. There's no direct connection between those terms, Madam Speaker. But when we talk about some of the experiences of the Bahamian people, having been arrested, going to the pump to get water to bathe a grandparent, being arrested trying to make a living selling coconuts. I appreciate this opportunity, Madam Speaker, but I do not want to take the Bahamian people down this painful path today. The record is replete with stories after story after story of the harsh experiences of the measures put in place by the former administration. But we look to the future. There are brighter days ahead with this administration, Madam Speaker. And we're looking to continue to work with our partners, to continue to get our tourism numbers up, to continue to attract new investments to our country. And we hope that these thoughts of these draconian measures will be the thing of the past forever in this country, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Kalani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to have expunged from the record the definition of the word draconian. The member is basically calling myself and my government dragon in action. And Madam Speaker, I take that insulting. I take that insulting, and I'd like that definition to be removed. Definition of draconian, in my view, mean that you have taken aggressive measures to prevent the spread of the virus. And yes, some things may have been done, but the laws were there. And as Prime Minister at that time and leader of the party at that time, I take full responsibility, and I am not running away from it. And I would hope that the present leader of the present Prime Minister does not run away from his responsibility.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Asmini?
Thank you very much.
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I can ask you a question in a moment. Madam Speaker, once again, I'd like to thank the great people of Marco City for giving me this opportunity, and to thank God for another chance to stand and present in this place. I did not hear the member for Exuma and Ragged Island thank the speaker. You know, I'm a basketball fan, and ordinarily in basketball, the point guard comes down the court, throws up the ball close to the rim so that the center or forward can dunk the ball. It's normally called a lob, and I noticed you didn't thank the speaker for lobbing you, giving an alley-oop for you to take what may have been a private definition in caucus and bring it in this place to pin on the former administration. It was not my intention, Madam Speaker, to speak to the COVID matter, but the good member for Ragged Island and Exuma opened an important discussion that we had intended as a team to leave for another occasion. We think it's unfortunate with such a short time in office that we are continuing the rally speeches. Madam Speaker, the government has been elected to provide firm, well-considered leadership to guide this country through treacherous waters that have been stirred by both Dorian and COVID. However, what is occurring is a continuation of statements about what must happen, as opposed to coaching what is being said in terms of these are the things we are doing to make those things happen. So tourism certainly, Madam Speaker, did not all of a sudden rebound under this administration. Much of the successes that are seen today was entrained prior to the election on September 16. In fact, the former minister, again, if you take the present minister's speech and you were to mute or change the voice recognition, you could be hearing Dionisio Diagula talk about the measures put in place and the results that came about as a result of it. Let me also, on the same subject, talk about some of the successes as it relates to the management of COVID. I think it is premature for this administration to start talking about successes, and I think it is often a mistake for any administration to pat themselves on the back when you have a month or two, or maybe even 3, where numbers are trending in the right direction. Because we are still in the midst of the pandemic. We experienced that, where there were periods. No, I'm here now. So let me say this. We were in the midst of COVID, and there were times where we took credit for some matters only for the numbers to change. That's the reality of life. Do not make the same mistake in terms of patting yourself on the back for things you had very little to nothing to do with.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Exum Ragged Island.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Marco City has a way with words. I wish he had used these words when we sat through all of those national addresses. Every time there was a dip.
What is the point of order?
Every time there was a dip.
What is the point of order?
When the
Honor member, 2 members. Honor member.
What is the point of order?
I have identified. He has not yielded. Honor member. Honorable member. Honor member.
What is the point of order? It's a question
But that's the question for me to ask.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Okay? Thank you, honorable member.
The member knows he is misleading, Madam Speaker. So we needn't get clarity on what the point of order is when he knows quite well.
Honorable member, 1 moment at a time. 1 member will be on their feet. Thank you. Proceed.
The member is misleading. He sat through the former cabinet. He did not use his wayward words. He's good at it. But he sat there and he said nothing. Every time the member for Kalani rose and he patted himself on the back, he declared that his protocols worked, he said. Right? And he did it over and over and over. So the member for Marco City has now found his voice. When he sat there and he said nothing, whilst the member for Kalani and his colleagues consistently patted themselves on the back. In the middle of the pandemic, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
I thought a point of order was if a member, no, I'm talking to the member for Exuma and Ragged Island. No, you don't direct where I speak. By way of the chair.
Honorable member for Marco City. Honorable member Marco City,
yes.
Speak to me.
Madam Speaker,
Thank you,
by way of you, to my colleagues.
This is not an argument. We're talking.
No, it's not an argument. It's not an argument. It's a debate about life and death situations where we have a member. Where we have a member of the government.
Honorable member.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
I have allowed on both sides these things to happen.
Yes.
So when it happens to you,
no problem.
when it happens to you,
and that's why I'm addressing it.
I have allowed on both sides.
That's why I'm addressing it, Madam Speaker.
And so you address me.
May I continue now, ma'am?
You shall continue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, honorable member.
We raised in this place and on multiple interviews that we had concerns that we were facing a crisis in the midst of COVID. The government berated us as we made recommendations. Yet, Dr. Bartlett just indicated that based on hospitalizations and the rate of infections, we're in crisis. The goal wasn't to be overly critical of the government. It was only to caution the government that as you seek to move from, as you call it, the draconian measures, that you don't take a less than serious attitude towards COVID. So what has happened? What has happened essentially, in your attempts to maintain some of your rally speeches, the government has a less than serious attitude in addressing the management of COVID. I will give the examples.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
It is offensive, Madam Speaker, for the member to say that our Prime Minister, Minister of Health in this administration has a less than serious attitude towards the management of COVID. Whilst out of the one mouth he says, don't politicize COVID, he does exactly that. The member is good at he's good at words, Madam Speaker. He didn't use those words when he had the authority to do so as a member of the cabinet. And now he comes here and he makes these baseless accusations against this administration. And the healthcare professionals, Madam Speaker, the same healthcare professionals who have always been there, working before sunrise and after sunset to help to keep us safe. This is offensive to us,
Honourable member,
and it is offensive to the hard-working healthcare professionals, Madam Speaker, to say that we have taken a less than serious
that is for me to answer, though.
Yes, but help me.
No, I can't help you. Help you understand. I will make the final decisions.
I didn't hear. I missed it.
I have allowed. Give me a minute, Obama. I have allowed on both sides members to exercise their right to speak on things that were not points of order. So now when it affects you, honourable member, it is now a problem. The member is just answering what you put on the floor. And so I am okay. Thank you, honourable member. Okay. Pardon me?
That will continue today as others speak. Have an opportunity.
Of course. Don't I always allow you to speak?
No problem. Continue, please, Madam Speaker. Continue.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
I only want to caution members, Madam Speaker, that when we cast those types of aspersions in a very serious pandemic, that the current administration is not taking or has not taken a serious approach. It also offends the health advisors, the healthcare professionals, the EOC, the same people who provide advice to the former administration provide advice to this administration. So I caution the member to be
said exactly.
Madam Speaker, whilst
Honourable member,
no need to caution me.
Madam Speaker, whilst the member waxes poetically about what this administration is doing and how seriously or not we're taking the pandemic, I am thanking the health professionals for the work that they're doing, for the advice that they are giving us. And we are endeavoring, Madam Speaker, to balance public health with the growing of a tourism industry and the maintenance of a robust economy. And that is what we will continue to do.
Thank you, honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member. Let me finish.
I return.
I'm recognizing you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
I'm not invisible in the room, eh?
You are absolutely visible, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. Thank you. Now the chair recognizes the honourable member for Marco City.
Appreciated, Madam Speaker. I begin where I left off. The very health professional that has been referenced by the member from Exuma and Ragged Island has stated what the government has refused to accept and state to the population, that we are in crisis. That's not a disrespect of the health professional. It is embracing their own words in describing where we are. And so when I said that the administration has a less than serious attitude, in essence, I'm saying that when one attempts to dismiss Omicron as a less than serious virus, one is actually diminishing the impact that Omicron infections can have on workplace productivity.
The honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker, I would prefer not to belabor this. But when the member say that this administration has taken any strain of this virus in a less than serious way, he is not being factual and he's not being sincere in his words. We will demonstrate, as we have demonstrated always in the words of our leader and in the words of the Minister for Health, that we are taking the issue seriously by putting in place proper protocols. Many countries in the world, Madam Speaker, have now declared that Omicron is a less serious variant, as has WHO and the CDC. And that is factual, Madam Speaker. Many countries have moved to a point, at least 10 of them, where they have declared that Omicron is a less serious variant than Delta, Madam Speaker. So for him to talk about this administration making a declaration on Omicron as being less than severe, he's clearly not keeping up with the science, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Honorable member, let's be
Just don't say we take
patient.
it less than seriously.
I can't help you with that one.
Okay, when a member is on the floor, give the member the opportunity and another member will have their chance. But we cannot allow two members to be on the floor speaking at one time.
It may be helpful to reduce one getting up so often, but Madam,
You would like for me to enforce that rule?
Madam,
Really?
Madam Speaker, look, Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you very much, member for Exuma and Ragged Island, for using the exact words that I just used with respect to describing the government's management. Again, Dr. Bartlett states that Omicron is responsible for increased hospitalizations of Bahamians. That's a statement. So you've just supported the point that I'm making, that by underestimating the impact of a virus that is less deadly on the surface. Would you, Madam Speaker, can I complete? Protect me, Madam Speaker.
Allow him to finish, please.
Yes, thank you. By dismissing the impact, and let me explain the impact since you appeal to the science. If somebody is infected, even with a less deadly virus, the requirements according to the rules, the regulations that this administration has put in place, requires them to be at home, to quarantine. They can't show up. They can't show up to work, or they shouldn't. So what does that mean for businesses, the livelihoods that we have claimed that we're committed to protecting? It means less persons are available to deliver the goods and services required in order for this economy to click on all cylinders. It also means that health professionals who are essential, who are already in short supply, are unable to show up to deal with whether it is COVID patients or persons afflicted with any number of other diseases. And so, Madam Speaker, when I make the point that it is a less than serious attitude, it was clearly illustrated by the member for Exuma and Ragged Island, that by not appreciating the potential impact of all strains of the virus, we are in fact not taking the measures required in order to protect the population.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Be serious. He's gone from saying that we have a less than serious attitude towards the management of COVID to saying we are dismissing the seriousness of the virus. It is offensive, Madam Speaker. And it's untrue. And I ask him to withdraw it, Madam Speaker, because he is not only offending us, he's offending the health professionals, Madam Speaker. We have never said that this variant or any other variant was not serious.
You just said it.
We have never said that we were out of the pandemic. What we have always said, and what the health professionals have always maintained, that Omicron is different from Delta. It's different, Madam Speaker. Its impact is different. I invite the member to look at the science, Madam Speaker, and not try to score cheap political points by attempting dishonestly to say that this administration is not or has not taken the management of COVID and this pandemic seriously. It's just wrong, Madam Speaker, and it's dishonest, Madam Speaker. And I ask him to withdraw those remarks. He's good at words. He can make the point he wishes to make without being offensive and without being dishonest, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, for the short time I've been in this place while we were in government and even now, I've never accused the member of being dishonest. So it strongly suggests to me that the pressure on the member is tremendous to demonstrate commitment to team, and that you must take a blow for the team. And so, given the pressures I'm aware of, I'm going to let that one. I'm going to let that slide. Only to say that I believe that this has nothing to do with dishonesty. It has to do with the fact that you put in place rules, and no less than the chief rule maker has broken the very rules. So when you want to talk about less, than serious, again, let me support the assertion. I've already stated one. Two is it is important that the government sends the right message in beefing up COVID ambassadors. Increase the numbers. Make sure that they go to the relevant functions and manage them carefully. It's important. That sends the right message. When we made a recommendation to the administration that you ought to change the entry requirements coming into the country, we were rebuffed for weeks before the government finally said, we agree. We should change it. We should change the entry requirement so that there's a requirement for PCR tests and it should be 72 hours. That's the facts. It was not the case in the beginning, but you made the adjustment. So again, when I make the point that you have less than a serious attitude, it is not a controversial issue. It is a less than serious. You can, in fact, send the right signals. We also talked about the hotels, that there's a different rule for hotels where Bahamians by the tens of thousands work. Tens of thousands. You have a rule where Bahamians are required outside of the hotels to gather in small numbers, 20 inside, 30 outside. Unfortunately, you then amended it to make the amount of persons inside a building, make it a percentage of the size. Fine. In hotels, there is a different rule. The question is, what is the justification? What makes the hotel property fundamentally different than other properties? So again, I stand by the assertion. And so as not to belabor the point, because this is not a COVID presentation, but you opened the door in terms of talking about COVID.
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Exum and Ragged.
I too would like to move on. But I cannot accept on the record, Madam Speaker, this member saying that this administration has not taken seriously this pandemic or this virus. It is offensive and it's untrue, Madam Speaker. If he prefers untrue, I will say untrue. It is offensive and it is untrue, and I ask him to withdraw it, Madam Speaker.
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marco City.
Again, Madam Speaker, as I wrap up my reference to the COVID matter, I recommend to this government that in all that is said and done, that we demonstrate that we recognize that this is a life and death issue. To that extent, it is important that we make the necessary adjustments, amount of surveillance, as well as enforcement, whether it is using present law enforcement or increasing COVID ambassadors, as I said earlier, is critical. ensuring that you have adequate therapeutics to make sure we are able to take care of persons who are presently challenged. If you're waiting for withdrawal, that's a waste of time. That's not going to happen. Not in this lifetime. And so that's not going to happen. And there's no basis for expunging it from the record either. It is a less than serious attitude. That's the point.
Chair recognizes the honourable member for examination.
Speaker, it is a serious allegation when the members say that this side has not taken the pandemic and our response seriously. We need, and without belaboring the point, Madam Speaker, I ask that those references be expunged. But let me just say this. We don't need a lecture from a former cabinet minister who sat in the administration of the member for Kalani, whilst any number of ill-informed, ill-advised decisions were made. Right. Madam Speaker, we take informed advice. Sometimes we get it right. When we don't get it right, Madam Speaker, we make adjustments. So he's castigating us for making adjustments in the travel policy. That is what we should do. My primary point, Madam Speaker, and I won't rise on this again, but I'm pleased asking you to expunge from the record the references to the fact that this member said that this administration has not taken the pandemic seriously or this virus seriously, Madam Speaker. I ask that the words in reference to those be expunged from the records, and then he can carry on, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marcos City.
Madam Speaker, you are qualified to do the job as you see fit. It is my hope that that request is one that is not acceded to. There is no basis for editing, amending a phrase that you have a lackadaisical attitude in some respects to this particular pandemic. That's the point. That's the point I'm making.
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for West Granville.
Madam Speaker, the member for Marcos City is being irresponsible. He must remember, as leader of the opposition, you are transmitting a message to the global community about this country, about a government of this country that you're part of. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the politics you play, the cheap political points you're trying to make. That does not score you points, it scores the country's points. We've found ourselves in situations before when leaders of our country travel abroad and talk about and say nasty things about their own country, as opposed to understanding that when you stand up in here and say that we're not serious, where that goes, that affects tourism, that affects investments, that affects every single thing in this country. So you could make, and I think the member said it so eloquently, he said you have a choice of words. You can use words effectively. Use the correct words if you wish to say negative things about the government, you can. But to send a message that affects everyone, those same nurses and doctors you talk about, the same hoteliers you talk about, everyone, that's absolutely irresponsible. And you, Mr. Leader, will come off as a super spreader of misinformation.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you. The Chair is now making a determination. I've listened for less than 10 minutes. Give me. For more than 10 minutes to the debate on both sides. While I will expunge when the member for Exomo and Ragged Island said vicious dragons, I will also expunge the fact that you would have shared lackadaisical. When you say that sends a very, very deep message to the public and less than serious. So the handling of COVID spreads beyond these walls. It spreads also to our doctors and our medical facilitators. And so for you to address it like that would have meant that they are being advised, the government is, by members of the medical profession. And so to say lackadaisical is an insult to them, honorable member. So I cannot allow. So I've listened and I'm making my determination now to have that expunged and taken from the record.
1 second. So, Madam Speaker, the member for Ragged Island Exuma utilized a term dishonest. Are you expunging that? Huh?
Thank you, honorable member.
Okay.
Thank you.
You wanted to make a point.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for
Thank you
Kalama.
very much, Madam Speaker. I was enjoying the debate, but the member for West End, can't see too well. The West End and the member for Exuma alluded to the point that my government had implemented ill-advised and ill-informed. Madam Speaker, our advice and information were given by the medical professionals. So he's really insulting the medical professionals. What he's saying is they gave us, we implemented the advice. And I think the member should be very careful in the words he uses in insulting the medical community.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
But it wasn't the medical professionals who caused the young man who was going to get water at the pump to bathe his grandparent to be given a fine and a criminal record, Madam Speaker. It was true the emergency orders implemented by the former Prime Minister who called himself competent, Madam Speaker. It was his emergency orders that caused this to happen. Had nothing absolutely to do with the health professions. And I've said here before, I've said here today that we are very thankful to all of the people in the health community, doctors and all of them, the officials who work hard every day. We are continuously grateful to them, Madam Speaker. And I want the record to reflect that very
Thank you,
clearly.
honorable member.
Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honorable member
this
for
attempt to give the
What are
impression.
you rising on, honorable member for Marcos?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This attempt to give the
Is
impression
that a point of order?
that there's no point of order. I'm the Speaker.
You're just speaking.
Again, this attempt to give the impression
Okay.
that the government has a monopoly on appreciation for healthcare workers is less than authentic or believable. It is not. So let's be clear. Let's be clear on that. And in terms of the lecture, on what messages we are sending internationally, I remind the government that there are 3 different versions of why the sitting lawmaker left quarantine. 3 different versions. The member for Cat Island's own words, a statement from the office of the Prime Minister, and then, of course, the Minister of Health. So I don't want us to leave here today seeking to give the public the impression that some of us are in here to score political points, when the reality is that the behavior that we take. Now, here's the issue. Now, this is an issue that could be put to bed by a simple explanation by the member for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador. Because again, we are asking the public to behave in a certain way, and we then behave differently. Now, I'm of the view, I'm on the record of saying these kinds of matters should be dispensed off very quickly so we can move on. So the member speaks and says, this is what the facts are, and we move on. But don't accuse me of trying to score cheap political points when I'm making the simple point that the government flaunts the law. This administration, in multiple ways, let me give a couple of examples. I just gave one as it relates to COVID.
Honorable member.
Allow me to complete the point. Allow me to complete the point.
Today we are here to...
Allow me to complete the point.
Honorable member, I've given you more than enough
Madam
time.
Speaker, I'm moving on from that subject. I wish to then continue by talking about examples of where the law requires, in terms of the fiscal strategy report, the law requires that the fiscal strategy report be brought to this place and laid on the table for debate.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for West Grand Bahama.
Bahama has yet to get to the resolution. Where's the relevance, Madam Speaker? Please, Madam Speaker, please, Madam Speaker, we ask you to keep our debate focused on the resolution. That is what we've come here to discuss.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for
Madam Speaker.
Marco City, hear me. I understand what you're doing here, and we hear you, right? And I believe you when you say what you say. But let us get on with the business of this house.
So that's what I'm trying to do that within my last. It shouldn't that be a little bit more time? But
Where get it from?
So, Madam Speaker, allow me to. I'll continue to do that. Madam Speaker, I made this point. There's a pattern of behavior that I'm concerned about, that we're concerned about, that I believe many Bahamians are concerned about. One is we're going to debate this resolution that the member for West End and Bimini wishes for us to narrowly focus on, despite the fact that the member for Exuma and Ragged Island did not. But one rule applies to him and one applies to the opposition. That's fine. So here's what I'm. The pattern of behavior is this. One, we're coming to the House without a serious legislative agenda. We're coming in and looking at resolutions for a brief period of time. I mean, how much time does it take to bring a series of legislation to this place to address the myriad of issues that affect the Bahamian people? I am certain there are members on the government side that are concerned that we'll come in here, we'll sit for an hour or two, and then we're off somewhere. That's a pattern of behavior. The second thing is failure.
Honorable member.
What is the point of order? What is the point of order?
I wish to respond to it. The only pattern of behavior I've seen lately is filibustering by your side, and particularly by you. The pattern of behavior, if you want to tell us how to set our agenda will be based upon the governance of this country, and we will lay our agenda, and I speak directly to your member. And he's informed every day of what we're going to do. Because unlike what you perhaps did in the past, we communicate and we hide nothing from the member. And we're very open and the member knows. And we will populate our agenda on issues that affect our country. And we're not here to waste time for an hour. This is very important. And the member for Exuma discussed it in its importance for the growth and development of the tourism industry. If you understand that, then you'll understand the importance of the resolution. And maybe you should get to that as opposed to wasting time as you have done now for more than 15 minutes.
Honorable member, may I add 4 bills? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 bills were tabled today. So I cannot allow you to make that kind of assertion.
I did. I may disagree, but I did. I felt more work could be done, Madam Speaker. More work could be done. That's all I'm saying, Madam Speaker.
I will have that expunged from the record.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Madam Speaker, the fiscal strategy of the country is critical for us to discuss in the Parliament. The Fiscal Responsibility Act called for that strategy to be laid. The government was late in preparing it, and the government refuses to lay the report in the House of Assembly as required by law. And Ministry of Finance has indicated that it has intentions to make adjustments. But until adjustments are made in the law, the government has a responsibility to lay the report in the House of Assembly in order for us to debate it. That's a requirement by law. So when I talk about a pattern of behavior, West End and Bimini, I'm saying the pattern of behavior of ignoring what is required by the law. The member for Ragged Island and Exuma, Madam Speaker, stood up on countless occasions to berate the Minister administration for having not reported on COVID spending. We have said since we've been in the House that we...
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member.
And the point of order specifically, Madam Speaker, relates to Rule 30 and subsection 23, right? The honorable member for Marco City talks about a pattern of behavior. 5 months, a pattern of behavior. I currently have the opportunity and privilege to serve as the Minister of Works and Utilities, Madam Speaker. And in every authority under that ministry, the law requires that an audited financial report be laid in this House. In the case of water and sewage, in the case of the Bridge Authority, we're talking about 3 years where there has not been the mandated, statutorily required audited financial report to be laid. And therefore, Madam Speaker, when you talk about a pattern of behavior, you're making a reference not only to the character of all of the members on this side. When you make an allegation of breaching the law, when you make an allegation of not complying with legislation passed by this honorable House, pattern of behavior, 4 months, 4 years, and in each of those 4 years, and that's what, Madam Speaker, we are dealing with. How do we correct the pattern of behavior? And therefore, the member should be a little more temperate when you attribute to this side who are trying to clean up a persistent pattern of conduct. And in 4 months, the allegation is made. And when we talk about pattern of behavior, you're talking about character. That's what you're talking about. You're saying that the character on this side has no respect for the law, does not observe the law. And I think, Madam Speaker, the honorable member, I'm not going to ask that it be expunged because I know the honorable member, Madam Speaker, will do the honorable thing.
Thank you.
Madam
The chair recognizes the honorable member for.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So Madam Speaker, I believe that on the other side, as I have said on numerous occasions in this place, they are honorable, talented men and women. So for the member for Fort Charlotte, I have not resigned from that position at all. What I am saying is that there are some glaring cases, if that would be more palatable to you, where the government has been asked to comply with the law and have refused to do so. So I'm giving you the practical examples. One of them is in terms of the fiscal responsibility report. We asked that it be laid because the government was late. And then when the government did in fact act, the government decides to put it in the public domain. And we had no less than a senior public servant make the point that the law is going to be changed, so there is no need for the government to come and bring it here. That's a problem. Let me continue. That's one. Second, we have the Procurement Act. The Procurement Act, again, requires that all contracts, back to the point raised when we were in government by the member for Exuma, the Procurement Act requires that all contracts that are issued, that those contracts ought to be reported, and this administration have refused to comply with the requirements of the, just permit me, I'm making the case. So I've given you 2 examples. Let me give you a third. There's also a requirement under the Public Finance Management Act.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
The honorable member must know that the Procurement Act, the mechanism, the implementation regime that the previous government ought to have established, not only at the Ministry of Finance, but in all of the various ministries, were never set up, were never established. And all of the, well, certainly, Madam Speaker, I will speak on that, on this issue at another time. But at least be forthright and say that on the eve of the general election, you endeavored to put some things in place, but you didn't put them in place. And here now, you have a new administration that must review and put in place and come back here and make the necessary amendments in order to ensure that the objects are best served of the Act.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marcus.
Here's a simple answer to that particular point raised by the member for Fort Charlotte. No, here's again, if one desires to be transparent in reporting all of the contracts since September 16 that have been issued.
Honourable Member, this is now turning into debate. This is more from COVID-19 to contracts. We are here to debate a resolution. I think the people of this country
Madam Speaker, we do not oppose the resolution. We do not oppose the resolution. So having said that, Madam Speaker, I've identified 3 separate pieces of legislation that has reporting requirement or should be brought here in order for us to debate as a parliament. Just last week, we said there was a need for a separation between the executive and the legislature, that the legislature ought to have oversight on any number of things and not dictated to by the executive. I listened to the speeches, wonderful presentation. When the government makes a determination that the fiscal responsibility or the fiscal strategy report could not be brought here, there's nothing, no impediments in the law, no deficiencies in what we pass that prevents that report from coming to this place. Nothing. So to give the impression that actions have not been taken to comply with the law because there are certain deficiencies, again, that does not tell the entire story. And in terms of the Procurement Act, to be very specific, if this government was minded to release the list of contracts that they have signed, who the beneficial owners are, what the amounts are, was it done through successful bidding? You can do that even independent of the Procurement Act. You could go to your database. The spirit, Madam Speaker, of the law is the Procurement Act is calling for us to not disadvantage anyone. It's asking that through a competitive bidding process that we have some transparency in how government allocates contracts. Right? And so, listen, I have said over and over, wherever the Free National Movement fell short, we take responsibility and we accept responsibility. It wouldn't have been right then and it isn't right now. That's the point. So all I'm saying is this conversation about certain things not being put in place is unfortunately a defense that falls flat on its face. Every entity, according to the Act, every entity has the ability to report who they have entered into contract with on behalf of the Bahamian people. And I've given 3 examples, and there's a fourth. The Public Finance Management Act is one of them. The other act that, again, we are in breach of is the Annual Debt Management Strategy. And so it's important, again, on this issue of patent, I'm saying in the financial services sector, and the former Minister Thompson will elaborate more, the member for East Grand Bahama, there is a need for us to be transparent in how we are handling the business. Exuma and Ragged Island required that the FNM report which how you spend COVID funds. We heard that consistently. Again, you in the chair now, can you report? And again, what did I say? We made the point that wherever it was not done, it cannot be justified. It cannot be justified. That's fine. But I'm asking you, you have 4 pieces of legislation. Will the government of the Bahamas comply? Madam Speaker, before I take my seat, let me make this point. The member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador visited Grand Bahama recently, and the two of the members on this side will talk about this at great length, and made the statement that investors are not, that he spoke to, not particularly interested in investing in Grand Bahama. We thought that that was an alarming statement. We really would like to know exactly who the Prime Minister, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador may have been speaking to. Just a moment ago, members of the government talked about a statement made by the then head of state, the member for Kalani when he traveled. But it's interesting that in Grand Bahama, a statement to West End and Bimidi's point, a statement that went around the world. A message was sent by the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador that, investors are not, this is the takeaway, investors are not interested in Grand Bahama. That statement, clearly I'm hoping that it was, that the member was misquoted, or somehow the line that was delivered to the public, the headline, did not fully grasp what he intended to say. But that is a matter that we believe that the member ought to clarify, because, again, it sends the wrong message around the world and affects any number of decisions potential investors are prepared to make.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exum and Raglan.
Madam Speaker, it is regrettable that the comments made by the Prime Minister may have been interpreted that way in a headline. We regret that. The Prime Minister speaks boastfully about our country, proudly about the opportunities in Grand Bahama. Each time we endeavor to travel to Grand Bahama, we feel the pain of the people in Grand Bahama.
You are very good. Oscar, boy. Oscar.
The message, Madam Speaker,
You are very good.
is that, and we hope that the leader of the opposition will help us take this message, is that there are great possibilities in Grand Bahama. But we want investor confidence to be inspired by many of the things that we seek to do in Grand Bahama. And we're asking, notwithstanding the politics of different sides, that Marco City join the co-op and help us to send this very clear and concise message to the world. We're open for business, not just in the other islands, but in all of the islands of the Bahamas, including Grand Bahama. So we regret any misinterpretation or any headline grabbing that may have happened in relation to this issue. The member lives in Grand Bahama, and he's well familiar with the pain of Grand Bahama, and I know that he will take the invitation to help us send a very clear signal to the world that we're open and we're restoring even more confidence in the island of Grand Bahama with our actions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, again, as we have said in the COVID fight, we have volunteered to join the government in that regard in terms of the messaging and the education, and we await to be included. We've done that now for going on 2 to 3 months. It has not yet happened that we have been included. Okay, well, again, so we've been available. While in Grand Bahama as well, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador made the point that taxes will be the last resort for this administration. That was rather curious that the statement was made, given the fact that less than 48 hours earlier, clear statements were made by the Ministry of Finance that the government intends to increase its revenue by $1.3 billion through a variety of revenue-generating measures. Among the revenue-generating measures includes taxes. And so the question is, if taxes is the last resort, sorry, you want me to rephrase it? Help the public understand what are the range of revenue generating options that can generate $1.3 billion. And this is rhetorical. This is not an invitation, right? So again, what is clear to us is that the government intends to increase taxes. Just allow me to complete the statement, and then you could in a more fulsome way, you could respond. Just allow me to complete it. We have looked high and low at the report. And there are several ways in which governments clearly are able to generate additional revenue. And there are ways in which the government can save on expenditure. We can find no means of the government raising $1.3 billion, and listening to the financial secretary, it seems absolutely clear, and you'll hear in greater detail from the member from East Grand Bahama, that the government has sent a clear signal to the market. This is what the market is saying. And that clearly this administration has plans to raise taxes or introduce fees that result in the same thing, which flies in the face of two things. One, what was promised, and two, what was stated in Grand Bahama by the Prime Minister. And so, as we look at the fiscal responsibility report, it also talks about transitioning, which is a sexy word, for laying off or right-sizing the public service. And this is stated by no less than a public servant. Not a minister who's responsible for policy and major announcements about what the government intends to do in the future. So we are very concerned. We are very concerned by the message that is being sent to the public that this administration is poised to raise taxes and secondly, to lay off public servants. And what we would like is to understand the details. What is motivating the pronouncements made by Ministry of Finance, and how is it that no minister prior to the statements coming out of Finance were able to talk about the downsizing of the public service or the taxes or fees the government intends to introduce in order to achieve the $1.3 billion in revenue. So,
the chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
If you're able to, thank you, Madam Speaker, just identify the source of this information about laying off in the public service. The source of it. Where are you getting the information from?
We were listening to the financial secretary in the comments, and we were looking at the fiscal responsibility report that talks about transitioning public servants from the public sector to the private sector. That's a line coming out of your report, and it is in fact a line, and I'll take the time and find it for you. And I'm just saying, I just want to let you know that it's there. That's in your report, but we are aware that a number of the members on the government side haven't had a chance to read the report. Let me just finish. We are aware that a number of the ministers have not had an opportunity to read the report in its entirety. So I understand the difficulty you may be having. Yeah, sure.
Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the
we're
honourable
about
member for Exum and
to
Rankin.
delve in now to the budget debate.
Yes.
So we know that there's a midterm budget debate coming in the middle of February, but we've delved into many different debates today, Mr. Speaker. And no doubt when it comes to revenue enhancement measures, that will be covered in the budget debate that was upcoming very shortly. And when we talk about, or when there's talk about transitioning from the public employment to the private employment, every government would agree that if that's achievable, that would be a good thing. It would mean that the economy is growing vibrantly, and it would mean that the government is creating jobs in the private sector that's desirable for persons in the public sector to access. So that is my interpretation of it. There is nothing sinister. The Minister of Public Service doesn't even know the reference in which the member for Marco City is making. So I'd ask him just to not be mischievous on this issue, right? But to simply accept that when a government talks about transitioning from public sector to private sector employment, it means that we are optimistic about what we see in the private sector.
Madam Speaker.
And there will be jobs available in the private sector that may not have ordinarily been available. And I would invite the responsible leader of the opposition to not cause fear in the community by suggesting that this government is laying off public servants, but simply to accept the explanation as I have proffered, because that is what I believe was intended. We are growing the economy, we are creating jobs, we're creating opportunities, and this may not be, this might be, let me leave it there, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Let me leave it there. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker.
The city is already on his feet.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Fiscal Responsibility Act calls that the report be laid. This is why it's important that it's laid in Parliament. The actual report references the size, the percentage in terms of cuts. So I'm just saying, don't attempt to convince the public that I'm creating this. I'm reading from the report that you have put in the public sphere. No, it gives a percentage. It gives a figure. So all I'm saying is, this is why it ought to come here. So I'll stop there, Madam Speaker, only to say that while we support the resolution, it is our hope that we are able to have a more aggressive legislative agenda so we can weigh in on a regular basis on the issues that affect the Bahamian people versus coming here, doing a resolution, and then we're off for the next 2 weeks or so. That's my point. With that, Marco City Ras.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes
Just
the Honourable Member for
record,
Exuma.
the minister responsible for public service has not identified anywhere in any public documentation or policy documentation of this government an intention to cut the civil service. I don't want the public to get the wrong impression of what the member may have said, intentionally or unintentionally. I would like to reflect that the word transition from public sector to private sector in its purest form speaks to a growing private sector economy, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
And I would suggest that the responsible leader of the opposition choose to take that path unless he's advised otherwise, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, before we proceed, 3 points as we proceed with our debate. I want to draw the attention in our rule books to page 26. Article 33. And this will stand for all members as we proceed forward in our debates. And it reads, every member desiring to speak shall rise and address the chair. A member may read extracts from books, journals, papers, and documents, and may refresh his memory from notes. But he shall not quote from newspapers unless he adopts such quotations as his own words, and such are relevant to the business under the debate. Members, as a general rule, may not read their speech. Then I will go to number 3. When 2 or more members rise to speak, the speaker or chairman may call upon the member who is, in his or her opinion, first rose and his place. Then we will go to number 15. Number 17. Imputation of improper motives and personal reflections on members shall be dealt with by the chair under the rules relating to order in the House and its committee. That is on page 28. On page 29, 27A, a call to attention to a point of order or to a matter of privilege which has suddenly arisen. So that's saying to me, members may, in the following circumstances, only interrupt another member who is speaking by A, to call attention to a point of order or to a matter of privilege which has suddenly arisen, or C, to elucidate some matter raised in a speech if the member speaking gives way. So as we proceed, I would like us to be governed by our rules and privileges, and I will now say as many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for recognizing me this morning, Madam Speaker. I rise again on behalf of the wonderful people, good people of East Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker,
Mr. Forbes.
let me first start off with respect to the resolution. We support the resolution, and we support any effort to increase investment throughout the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank the member for the member for Exuma and Ragged Island for his comments in clarifying the headlines, the unfortunate headlines. And it is, I completely agree with the member for Marco City, our leader on this side, that those headlines struck a chord with Grand Bahamians, and it struck a negative chord with Grand Bahamians. And I also wish to push back and help the member for Ragged Island and Exuma, because he gave the invitation for us to assist in ensuring that the right message is sent with respect to Grand Bahama. This is not anything new for us on this side, because we've been sending this message for the last 5 years that Grand Bahama is a good place to invest. Every time I stood at that time it was in the Senate, every time that I stood, I made the point that we must be able to positively speak about Grand Bahama and positively speak about the Bahamas. And unfortunately, that headline did not give the right impression, and it did not send the right message. Even, Madam Speaker, with respect to some of the things that this government left in place. In fact, it's not just sending the right message, it's just simply not true. Because when you look at what investors and the interest of investors, when the Free National Movement was in government, and when we left government, the type investments that were on the table and on the drawing board in Grand Bahama and proceeding in Grand Bahama proves that investor confidence was high. When we look at Carnival Cruise Line, and Carnival Cruise Line has indicated that they want to continue with their project, and we hope that that continues in the quickest possible period of time. When we look at even investments in West Grand Bahama, there's a new small investment in West Grand Bahama that wants to proceed. In fact, the member for West End, I believe, knows this well because it was approved under his time, Bella Vita. When we look at the maritime industry, there was an investment that was approved by the Free National Movement, was in process, called Clean Marine. They even got an award from the IDB in order for them to proceed along with their investment. The Grand Bahama Shipyard. The Grand Bahama Shipyard is about to embark upon one of the largest investments in Grand Bahama's history. They are proceeding And these are the shareholders of Carnival and the shareholders of Royal Caribbean. And they are proceeding with constructing and bringing in the largest dry dock in the world. So to speak about investor confidence, and the ironic thing about it, Prime Minister, was the headline on one paper was about those comments, and then the headline in the other paper, in the business section, was actually about Doctors Hospital and their investment proceeding in Grand Bahama. And so again, that's why we're saying I did not believe that was the intention at all that the government wanted to put out there. But it was just unfortunate that the headline put that out there. You have the Discovery Bay project that was approved by the Free National Movement. Even the new medical school that was highlighted by the member for Pine Ridge, the new medical school that's proceeding. And that's not the only medical school that wanted to proceed in Grand Bahama. That's the second medical school that also wanted to proceed. So we hope that you would proceed and approve with the second medical school facility in Grand Bahama. Even local investment was moving in Grand Bahama. So we saw a new multi-million-dollar food store that was built in Grand Bahama, Sawyer's Food Store. And then we see moving because we had discussions with AML Foods and had requested AML Foods to, instead of rebuilding their facility on Queens Highway, to look at coming back to the downtown area. And they agreed to come back to the downtown area. And now we see that they have actually started construction with the food store. The Winn-Dixie, the previous Winn-Dixie is now going to be Solomon's in the downtown area, which we hope will provide tremendous economic activity. That was the vision of the Free National Movement in the request for them to come back downtown. In addition to the moving ahead with the University of the Bahamas to purchase a facility in the downtown area as well. And we hope that that proceeds as well. But with respect to investment in Grand Bahama, as we say, that was not at all the right message that was sent, and we are pleased that you have been able to speak to that. Madam Speaker, the member for Exuma also spoke to the Grand Lucayan. And they are now the government, and they have made the decision not to proceed with the agreement that was in place. And they have now decided to, what I would call, start from scratch. Because the process of Colliers, again, it's not an unfamiliar process. It is the exact same process that this government started and moved ahead with. And that's how we ultimately made the determination to proceed with the ITM and Royal Caribbean deal. Because they had gone through the process of Colliers. And Colliers then made certain determinations. So we wish you well in that process. That process is going to take time. As we said, we've been there before at that beginning stage. You've made some pronouncements in terms of what you hope to get. And again, we wish you well in that. We could talk privately offline in terms of where we believe you may ultimately land, but we wish you well in that process and in proceeding with your intentions. But it is unfortunate, though, that the process is going to start from scratch, and ultimately we know that these things will take time. We also are pleased that they will proceed with, you haven't provided the details of this, but I assume it is the same process that was left in place with respect to the RFP for the Grand Bahama Airport and the Family Island Airport. If there are adjustments, then I'm sure you're going to make those adjustments public. But the Free National Movement, before we left office, put in place an RFP process and were about to release that RFP process. And there was interest from a number of investors who, even before that process had started and that process was published, there were a number of investors who were interested in putting and submitting proposals for the Grand Bahama International Airport. So we wish you well with respect to that. And it is something in Grand Bahama, and I used to say this to the Minister of Health at the time, and I've also said it to the member for Pine Ridge. We all live in Grand Bahama, and so we all want Grand Bahama to prosper, and we all want Grand Bahama to do well. And so we on this side will do whatever we can to assist in that process and making sure that it goes well. Minister for Tourism and Aviation, we'll also ask member for Exuma. You'd indicated that you were proceeding with the elevators for the tower. And yes, that was actually funding that we had set aside and put in place in the budget. We had made a number of announcements that was on the agenda for us to proceed with, and so we're thankful that you are going to proceed with that. Again, something you did not mention, but we would ask you also to proceed with, because this was also on the agenda for us to proceed with, is the customs warehouse at the airport. And again, the customs warehouse, and I'm sure if you would have visited the airport, you would have seen the state that customs officers are in. And we hope that you will also proceed at the same time with renovating the customs warehouse that we had intended on proceeding with. Madam Speaker, again, I do not intend to be very long. However, the fiscal strategy report is again, I echo the comments made by the member for Marco City, our leader, that report ought to be tabled in Parliament and ought to be debated in Parliament. One of the things in the fiscal strategy report that was very surprising to us is the amount of budget cuts that is projected in this next fiscal period. And we have to ask the question as to, with all of the pronouncements and plans and statements that have been made by the government in terms of what they want to do in the future and what they want to do next, how is it that you are projecting to spend 70 million less? 70 million less when it comes to the public service. And that's projected in your fiscal strategy report. That in this next budget period, you're projecting to spend 70 million less on contribution to employee. And that's under the head contribution to employees in the fiscal strategy report. You are projecting also to spend between the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education, you are projecting to spend 30 million less than you spend in this fiscal period, in this budget. So again, we are seeking to understand that if you've put forward this you've put this as a projection, you put this in your fiscal strategy. You've said to the public that you should look forward to spending 30 million less in education. You've said in your fiscal strategy to the public that you should look forward to spending 10 million less on the police department, 5 million less on the Defense Force in next year's budget. I am saying the facts. I am saying the facts. The public will make their own interpretations. But the facts is that you have put in your fiscal strategy that you will spend millions less. The public will make their assumptions and they will have their own understandings as to what that means. They will say what that means. And they will have their own interpretations as to what that means. So, Madam Speaker, the point that we were again making with respect to the fiscal strategy is the House of Assembly, Parliament is the proper place for us to debate these matters.
The law says?
The law says that it must be brought here. It has not yet been brought here. It has not yet been debated. As well as, and this point was made, or this point was questioned. I believe this point was questioned in terms of what our leader had indicated, which again is very, very curious for me, because in Grand Bahama, the Prime Minister indicated that new taxes, that's a last resort. That's what the Prime Minister had indicated. But your Financial Secretary is quoted in the news dailies as saying that you will have to bring in new tax measures.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for...
I'm just wondering whether the member is prepared to lay that newspaper that he's referring to. Just before he spoke, Madam Speaker, you referenced the rules, which said that if you're going to quote from a paper, you should lay it. You should lay it or withdraw it, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker,
The Chair recognizes East Grand Bahama.
we live in the world of technology, and I actually have it here on my screen, and I could actually show it to you. I could lay my computer on the table if you wish, but I can in very serious. I can print out the article and lay it on the article. I give my undertaking to do so, but I can at the very least, Madam Speaker, show you that this is indeed an article from the Tribune from the 31st of January. It is an article of Neil Hartnell, and it gives certain quotes from Simon Wilson, the Financial Secretary. And that's, if you wish me not to quote it, I won't quote it, I'll paraphrase it. But I can quote it if I'm allowed to, and I can undertake to provide and table the copy of it.
Honourable Member, I would ask that you bring that document laid on the table, because here we are. Mr. Wilson is not in this place.
Yes.
And so I would like to...
And I again, Madam Speaker, I have no difficulties with it.
Yes.
And what I suppose I can do is ask the government that my understanding of what was said, and again, I can table it with my understanding of what was said, because there are different questions that are being asked out there. In fact, that was precisely why the Prime Minister was asked that question that was precisely why he was asked that question in Grand Bahama, to clarify. Because on the one hand, someone from the Ministry of Finance is saying that what is going to be required is new tax measures in order for us to achieve what is in the fiscal strategy. Because that was the question that was asked. How are you going to achieve your projections? And the response was, we are going to have to make up the gap by new tax measures. I don't want to get into it because, again, we don't have the quote, so I don't want to get into it. However, the question...
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Exuma and Rankin Island.
Go ahead.
I believe that the member is an honourable member. If he wishes to quote from an article and undertake to lay that article later, I don't know that we would object to it. But I am very guarded by his paraphrasing. And I don't wish for him to mischaracterize what may have been said.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And I still agree.
I thank the member for Exuma, and I also would not wish to paraphrase. I would wish to say exactly what he is quoted as saying, and then
Yes.
they can.
So, Honourable Member, you can bring at the next sitting that document I will allow, and we will.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
And I'm quoting from the article. Simon Wilson, the Ministry of Finance Financial Secretary, told Tribune Business that some, quote, new tax measures will be required to achieve the projected 55.7% increase in government revenue over the next 4 years. He is also quoted as saying, and I want to get to that exact point that was made.
The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fort Charlotte.
The honourable member, under the rules, is not allowed to pick a bit here and a bit there from an article. I'm talking. Look here. The point of order. That's what we're on. We're on the point of order. Right? It says number 30, the Honourable Speaker. The Honourable Speaker said, okay, unless he adopts.
That's it.
Unless he adopts such quotation as his own words. And such, please, I can speak for myself, and such are relevant to the business under debate. No objection. I'm speaking for Fort Charlotte.
Yeah.
Must I come here and speak on the East Grand Bahama?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, so the member must say to this honorable house that this article that he has undertaken to lay on the table, that he has adopted the article. That is the rule. It is not Fort Charlotte. This is the rules of the House of Assembly.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The chair is in full agreement of that. Honourable Member for East Grand Bahama, are you willing to adopt?
Madam Speaker. And I will be quite honest, there are some parts of the article that I disagree with.
That you disagree with?
Yeah, some parts.
And
there are some parts that I have no.
So you're not willing to adopt the article?
So
thank you. Yes, thank you, Honourable.
This is why the rule is here.
Yes.
Because honorable members do not have the opportunity to interrogate every single bit and piece. We choose very carefully, or we ought to, what we bring into this house.
That's right.
And the rules require not that we adopt a piece of it, or we adopt. I mean, come on. I mean, that's the responsibility we all have to each other and to the public.
Thank you, Honourable. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for East Bahama.
I have made my point with respect to this. I will still undertake, as I have indicated to you, I will still provide you and table a copy of this article. I have no difficulties in doing that.
And when you bring the article, are you willing to adopt the article?
Madam Speaker, I have to indicate to you what is the truth. The truth is, there are some parts of the article that I agree with, and some parts I don't. So there are some parts I will adopt. I could adopt as my own statements. But there are some parts of the article that I disagree with. I mean, that's the truth.
But adoption is not.
That's the truth.
Yes. Thank you, Honourable Member. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fox Hill.
Thank you for yielding, because I too was concerned about this. And when I looked at it, I was trying to find anywhere in the article where they quote Simon Wilson as saying there will be increased taxes.
No, I didn't say that.
Right, but what I'm saying, so the problem, the problem is that it's gone out because of your objections in the public domain. It's gone out that you are saying that there's a variance between the Prime Minister and the Financial Secretary.
There is.
Now, hear me out.
Yeah.
That the Prime Minister is saying no taxes, and Simon Wilson is saying there are going to be taxes. What I saw when I read the article, I just read the whole thing. It says new revenue measures.
More than that, it says new tax measures.
New tax measures,
yes.
Even. But that's not the same thing as increased taxes. So hear me out again. Okay. So the fact that, for example, there's been a valuation of land in the country, that is a tax measure. But it doesn't mean
That's not a new tax measure.
It is a new tax measure. It is, absolutely. If you revalue land, that's a new tax measure.
Okay.
That's a new tax measure. So I'm saying it doesn't mean that you're going to be passing a law to increase taxes. And that's the thing, that's the issue we're taking with this.
Okay.
That's the issue we're taking.
And I actually,
Thank you, Honourable Member. The chair recognizes the Honourable
I
Member.
actually thank Member Foxhill for that, intervention, because you are absolutely correct. I'm not saying increase in taxes. That's not what the article said, and that's not what I quoted in the article. I quoted exactly new tax measures. Here is my challenge. My challenge is the Fiscal Strategy Report is a document designed to tell the public, to tell the Bahamian public and the international public what your future projections are, but also what are the justifications for those projections. People then make the decisions based on what you've put in there. There were, first of all, they did not indicate in the Fiscal Strategy Report that there were going to be these new tax measures. Nor did they say in the Fiscal Strategy Report, as you just said, these can mean this, it can mean that, it can mean the other. So as far as the public is to understand, there is a question mark as to what are these new tax measures. And you now have the Prime Minister, which I accept what the Prime Minister has said when he was in Grand Bahama, that increased taxes is a last resort. I accept what the Prime Minister has said in Grand Bahama. How do I square that with the Financial Secretary saying new tax measures? What does that mean? Give us some indication as to what these new tax measures mean. Because that has to square with what your projections are. Because you are projecting that you're going to have almost 60% increase in revenue over a very short period of time. So in the public's mind, those new tax measures will have to be significant in order to make up that gap. So that is why we're raising that point. And again, I'm not at all saying that anybody is being, untoward or whatever. It just emphasized the point why this should be brought to the House so that we can have a debate on it. And so that the government will have the ability to explain to the public why it says that you are taking away $30 million from education, and why it says you're taking away $70 million from contribution for employees, and $10 million from the police, and $5 million from the defense force.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Foxhill.
Thank Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm only seeking to answer the narrow point. You can make whatever comment you wish about the fiscal strategy report. It's the government's report, and the government can defend the report. I'm simply saying that I think it would be unfortunate for the impression to be given that there's a variance or difference between the Minister of Finance and the Financial Secretary. That's the issue.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for East
Madam Speaker, thank you. I did not intend to. I think we've litigated this quite a bit. I think the point that I wished to make was made. Madam Speaker, again, we do support what was the resolution. We support those measures that are going to assist in investment in Providence, but also we want the government to ensure that everything possible that could be done for Grand Bahama and the investments in Grand Bahama, that they are proceeded with, the airport that it is proceeded with, the Grand Lucayan project that it is proceeded with. We did not hear the member for tourism, the Minister for Tourism, member for Exuma, speak to the harbor portion of the deal, which is the ITM and the Royal Caribbean, and whether or not they are deciding to proceed and where they are at with respect to the agreement with Hutchison, because we know that that is a major sticking point, and we hope that you will have success in bringing them together and ensuring that